delighted to introduce our next speaker, Professor Douglas Hodgson. He was a lawyer, a lecturer, researcher, university administrator, author, and human rights advocate in Canada, England, Australia, and New Zealand, spanning 4 decades. He has published widely in the fields of causation law and the international human rights of children. He served as a peer reviewer and grants assessor for the Australian Research Council and is an attender and alumnist of the Oxford Roundtable. Upon his retirement from the position of Dean and Professor of Law, Professor Hodgson turned his research and writing efforts to a study of spiritual wisdom and virtue. His book, entitled Transcendental Spirituality, Wisdom and Virtue, The Divine Virtues and Treasures of the Heart, is scheduled for publication release in May next year. His latest book, entitled Spiritual Revelations from Beyond the Veil, What Humanity Can Learn from the Near-Death Experience, decouples spirituality from a religious context and dwells into the important messages those who have experienced a near-death experience have for humanity. Great pleasure for me to introduce Professor Douglas Hodgson, and he's going to talk about what we can learn from 500 accounts of near-death experiences. Take it away, Douglas.
Greetings, colleagues, and thank you, Joyce, and to the AIPR for your kind speaking invitation. I'd like to issue a disclaimer before I proceed. I myself have not had a near-death experience, and I'm not by training or by expertise a physicist, neuroscientist, or psychologist. I'm here simply, my task today is to be a mouthpiece for the messaging that the experiencers have brought back with them from beyond the veil. As the French philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin has observed, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Yet most of us do not consider ourselves as spiritual beings and do not profess to have much spiritual knowledge or experience. If I may quote briefly from the Quran, from chapter 17, verse 85, the spirit is one of the things, the knowledge of which is only with God. Humanity has been given only a little knowledge thereof. However, knowledge of the spiritual realms is now opening up to humanity as never before, thanks in part to the messages which have been brought back by those who claim to have had a near-death experience. I believe that we are on the threshold of a greater and more profound understanding of what has hitherto been regarded as the unseen and largely unknowable non-physical realms of existence. Many of us consider only fleetingly life's larger metaphysical questions. Does God exist? Does heaven exist? What happens when I die? Is there an afterlife? Do I possess a soul consciousness that survives the death of my physical body? What is the purpose of my earthly existence? And do each of us have a unique and tailored mission for our earthly lifetime? Although these questions cannot be answered through objective study of material or physical reality, they have all been answered by the intriguing written accounts of people who have had a so-called near-death experience, describing what they learned while outside of their physical body. A treasure trove of material exists on the website of the International Association for Near-Death Studies, the acronym being EANV, containing hundreds of such accounts. And what they described included, but went well beyond what can be found in religious scripture. These accounts include vivid descriptions of heaven and the higher spiritual realms, so-called universal laws, the nature of positive and negative energy, the nature and liberation of the soul consciousness, what interconnectedness means, the significance of the death of our physical body and our subsequent spiritual rebirth and life review. The study of these accounts and the identification of common observations and insights drawn therefrom culminated in the writing of my latest book entitled Spiritual Revelations from Beyond the Veil: What Humanity Can Learn from the Near-Death Experience. The messages from beyond the veil are clear, compelling, and profoundly life-changing. They dispel many of the delusions and illusions which burden our spirit and prevent us from progressing our soul's evolutionary journey. While some of the messages are disarmingly simple to comprehend, others appear beyond comprehension and perhaps even beyond plausibility in light of our constricting earthly life experience. But most importantly, they address how we are supposed to live our earthly lives and what our purpose here is, as well as how we should view the death of our physical body without fear and how we should perceive the afterlife. Briefly, in terms of my methodology, some 500 written accounts of those who have undergone an NDE, and which appear on the EAN's website, have been analyzed with a view to identifying frequently referenced common and similar observations and themes. And it is just not possible for me to cover all of the topics contained in my book with you today, but what I consider to be the most important messages and observations will be highlighted during my talk. I would like to begin firstly with interconnectedness. On Earth, we live in a dimension of apparent separation and separateness. We perceive our world as full of separate objects and living beings. Our reality is one of dualism, in which the observer is separate or apart from what is being observed. The notion of separateness is an earthly illusion. According to particle theory, every object or thing is connected with every other object through energy and its vibrations. Each particle is connected to every other particle at the deepest foundational level. In the spiritual realms, the perceiver and the perceived cannot be separated, being an indistinguishable one. Each of us is connected with everything, although we do not and cannot perceive, sense, or appreciate this in the earthly physical realm. That everything is connected to everything else is far more readily apparent in the higher spiritual realms. I'd like to share with you now a number of the observations from the experiencers themselves. We are source energy the essence of God, the single common component which connects everyone and everything. We are all one. Everything is one thing, made entirely of atoms. Things we can feel or touch are areas where the atoms are denser. It is not empty space between us, but areas of less concentration of atoms. Outside of my body, I didn't really feel or have a sense of me. I was everything, and everything was me. There was just one. In the higher realms, the I or ego does not exist. There is no separation or dualism. Earthly dualism is replaced by oneness, our earthly identity having dissipated. I'd like to turn now to the nature of the soul consciousness. Are we more than our physical bodies? When our body dies, does our awareness end in an empty void of nothingness, or does part of us continue in what has variously been described as the soul, spirit, life force, or consciousness? Does consciousness depend exclusively on a functioning human brain, or is it transcendental in nature, existing outside of a functioning brain? The accounts of the experiencers observe consistently that our consciousness survives the death of our physical body, as it does not depend upon a functioning brain. Our consciousness is eternal energy, independent of all physical and material matter. Outside of our physical bodies, our soul is a receptor to elevated awareness and expanded consciousness. And I'll now share with you a sampling of the observations of the experiencers. Our soul is energy, light, essence, and consciousness. Our soul is infinite and eternal, transcending space and time. Our consciousness goes on forever and expands in the higher realms. It is our eternal essence and is only housed temporarily in our body to enable us to undertake our earthly mission. Consciousness is not contained in the brain. It is eternal and exists without a physical body. Our soul comprises the core essence within us that truly makes us who and what we are. A number of the NDEers have looked into how we can liberate our soul consciousness. And according to them, liberation of the soul consciousness through detachment elevates our spirituality and cosmic awareness. The path to enlightenment leads through separation from this world and all of its distractions and illusions. Detachment is a letting go of things which must be parted with upon death of the physical body. Detachment is an understanding of the relative unimportance and transient nature of power, fame, and material wealth, as well as the suppression of the ego. Soul liberation also involves a divesting of fallacious human constructs, such as the human misunderstanding of death and the linear nature of time. It also involves a recognition of our misguided propensity to be controlled by our fears, which may so consume us that we fail to live our lives fully and remain oblivious to the purpose and meaning of our earthly life. We must free ourselves of these fears to enable us to reattune to what our particular mission is in this lifetime. And I will now share with you a number of the observations of the experiencers on this liberation process. Our souls cannot be truly enlightened until they are liberated from the distractions and attachments of this world and all its illusions. Enlightenment is the extinguishment of self and separation. The free, liberated soul cares not for identity, for ego, wealth, or fame. It does not carry the burden of worry or anxiety. It does not fear life on earth or departure therefrom. This is what God calls us to become and why we are here on earth. Everything in our life is fluid. Nothing remains the same. Every living thing grows and changes. Therefore, do not fear change. Accept change, let go, and positive things will come your way. Do not fear death and the unknown, because upon rebirth in the spirit world, all knowingness will return to you. When you have gone beyond the veil and returned to your body, you will no longer fear death. In fact, you will long for it. Dying is a human-created earth term or construct that means little in the spiritual realms. What about these higher spiritual realms? And the experiencers had much to say on various aspects thereof. According to the experiencers, the world of spirit is beautiful beyond comprehension and description. Experiencers are dismissive of the earthly notion that only that which is physical and can be seen with the eye is real. Many of the experiencers' observations are conceptually mind-boggling and virtually impossible to comprehend with our finite human knowledge and experience. For example, that the higher realms are beyond the matrix of time and space, at least as these concepts are understood and experienced on Earth. Much of what we consider important on Earth is considered irrelevant, insignificant, and superficial within the realm of spirit, where there is no longer any sense of self or ego, our earthly identities having been left behind. What is the nature of the spiritual realms? According to one experiencer, the physical world we experience is part of something vastly more complex. There are an infinite number of universes and realms of existence, both seen and unseen, part of the one source, inhabited by beings beyond our imagination. Each of us is a spirit, using our physical body to learn and evolve. Although spirits may be at different levels of development, they all remain on the same path to God or the source. What is the ultimate reality? My NDE was far more real than waking consciousness. Our earthly reality is a wondrous, awesome creation, and it has a purpose. But a far greater reality exists. When we dream at night, we do not consider it real, but consider earthly life to be our reality. But earthly life is but a dream compared to the spiritual realms. What about time and space? Time and space, as we are familiar with these concepts on Earth, do not apply in the higher dimensions. The spiritual realm is non-linear in nature, as it is not really one thing following after another. Rather, a moment can seem like an eternity, and an eternity like a moment. The past and the future, as we perceive these concepts on Earth, do not exist in the higher realms, only the present. Yet the present in the higher realms includes the future and the past. Everything that ever happened or is ever going to happen is actually happening at that very moment. In the higher realms, negative emotions do not exist. Only profound love, peace, and unconditional acceptance. The experiencers have quite a bit to say on knowledge and understanding, and I'll share the following observations with you. There are some things we as humans do not and cannot understand or remember during our earthly existence because we are not supposed to. This is for a higher purpose. Once outside the physical body, experiencers receive infused knowledge on how the physical and spiritual realms operate and interact with each other, and gain an understanding of conceptually complex matters that would take much longer on Earth to absorb and comprehend. There is no such thing as a question without an accompanying answer, making sense of all of the mysteries of the universe. For every question I asked of the light, a complete answer was provided instantaneously. Perfect knowledge, understanding, and awareness were imparted. Everything is instantly self-evident. Infused knowledge from the higher realms is simple and logical. It is we as humans which are prone to overcomplication. In the spirit world, understandings will come to you, which you have always known, but temporarily forgotten while in the earthly physical realm. Therefore, do trust your intuition, as that inexplicable knowing is based on knowledge that you yourself have derived in the higher realms. Tremendous knowledge was given to me, yet it was not the sort of knowledge you acquire from reading books. It was more like enlightenment. The knowledge and certainty I received from the infused universal knowledge while outside my body transcend earthly hope and faith. What about expanded sense perception and freedom of the soul in the higher realms? Sensory perception, particularly sight and hearing, if we can call it that, is much more in-depth and richer. Feelings and emotions are experienced more deeply. The soul has 360-degree vision. I was able to see simultaneously in all directions. The soul consciousness thinks and experiences more quickly and lucidly in the spirit world. The soul has far greater freedom in the spiritual realms. Movement therein is controlled by the soul's thoughts. To think of something in the higher realms is sufficient to move the soul consciousness towards it. And the soul consciousness can access any time or place on earth from the higher realms. In terms of communication therein, no words are spoken. All communication is essentially telepathic in nature. All questions are answered even before the thought question has been fully formulated. What about our earthly identity? Well, in the higher realms, we have no earthly name, but are recognized by our vibration or light. Earthly matters we associate with ourself or our ego dissipate and are meaningless in the higher realms. A number of the experiencers had observations on reincarnation, and here's what a few of them had to say. Outside of my body, I learned that reincarnation of the soul is a universal law. We have all passed through many lifetimes. As a result of my NDE, I now have certain knowledge and proof of the existence of reincarnation and karma. We keep coming back until we have learned all of the lessons and get it right. What is the meaning and purpose of our life on earth? Well, according to the experiencers, the answer would appear to be disarmingly simple. And the answer to this question is uniform across all of the accounts. And here is what they have to say. The lesson is so simple, understanding how much God loves us and how much we love ourselves and others. We are here to learn from our mistakes and grow and spiritually evolve, and to explore, feel, and experience. The world is our school, and we are expected to learn our lessons therefrom. We are here to love and be loved, and to help each other, to expand our capacity to give unconditional love to other beings. All you can carry with you upon your physical death is the love you have given to others. We are here to serve God by loving and assisting others, both materially and spiritually. We are to be selfless rather than selfish, and to be grateful, forgiving, and accepting. We are here to live life to the full and to derive joy from our experiences and relationships on earth. All of us have a purpose for being here, and each of us has an individual and tailored mission, which may be modest by the standards of the world, but for each soul it is most significant. Although we may not realize it at the time, events happen in our life for a reason. There is a higher purpose in everything. Challenges and struggles are not to be feared. Rather, they are opportunities for the soul to learn and evolve. Consider every obstacle in your life as an opportunity to discern the particular lessons you were sent to earth to learn. The experience we call life is a transitory, exploratory adventure for the soul. It is a place of preparation, of choices, and of opportunities to grow. Earthly life is a venturing forth to learn. Our physical death is a returning home. As one experiencer eloquently put it, victory or defeat, worldly success or otherwise, it is all the same. For when we transition beyond the earthly realm, the only thing that really matters is how we treated others. Add something of value to the world. Give more than you take. I'll briefly cover loving nature and all life forms. The experiencer's accounts tell us that Earth is a living organism to whom we should be grateful for its abundant blessings. The accounts also convey that nature has much to teach us, and that the universal laws require us to live in harmony with and respect nature, and not to take therefrom more than our needs require and what can sustainably be produced. We should rejoice in the beauty of all life, because all life is precious and sacred. It is imbued with spirit and consciousness. And I'll share with you a few of the experiencer's observations. God is in nature. God is nature. Love nature, study it closely, learn from it, and become one with it. Sanctify all life, for all life is precious. Therefore, do not do any harm or injury. Behold and rejoice in the beauty of all life forms, as they are all created by God. Like us, they have fear and they struggle to survive, so have compassion towards them. Animals have souls and reincarnate. I was going to speak to the so-called universal laws, but I'm afraid time doesn't permit, so I will skip over those and proceed on to positive and negative energy. One of the experiencers had this to say: "It is a universal law that everything is energy, which cannot be created or destroyed, and which has always been and always will be, moving in and through different forms, and ever in transition. We do not die. Our energy merely changes form." Other observations are as follows: all life, both seen and unseen, is energy. Energy emanates from humans, animals, plants, and trees. Everything is created from the same subatomic particles connected to source energy, which animates and connects all things. Each soul manifests both positive and negative energy. Everything exists in a continual balance between light and darkness, positive and negative. Positive energy comprises many of those qualities which religion considers as divine virtues. For example, unconditional love, compassion, serving and caring for others, acceptance and forgiveness, gratitude and joy. And I'll just give you a sampling of some of the experiencers' observations on positive energy. Unconditional love is the most powerful energy in the universe. It does not attach conditions to its flow and is the foundational core of all that exists. It is a love for all that is, which does not differentiate or distinguish. Love is a vibrational energy flowing through and connecting all things, like an electrical current. Manifest love and compassion towards every living thing. Feel what they are feeling and radiate positive thoughts and feelings towards them. We must love the unlovable and those who do not know any better. I was told by the light to look for the good in others and to do unto them as you would have them do unto you. Joy and gratitude are two of the highest vibrational states. Accept others as they are, rather than how we think they should be. Forgiveness may be one of the most difficult things for us to do, but forgiveness heals our soul and sets us free. Negative energy does not exist in the higher spiritual realms, as it is incompatible with unconditional love. Such energy includes hatred, fear, condemnation, judgment, killing or harming others, anger, greed, selfishness, guilt, worry, and anxiety. Such negative thoughts and emotions alter our energy flow, stopping the flow of positive energy and light and producing denser vibrations. Let us turn to our physical body, its limitations, and eventual demise. We are not merely our bodies. Our body entraps our soul consciousness, which is eternal. Experiencers have variously described the human body as the soul's prison, shell, shelter, or temporary home for the duration of our earthly sojourn. Our body is temporarily borrowed to enable our soul consciousness to experience earthly life and to learn and grow from that experience. Our physical body is indeed subject to significant limitations in the earthly plane. We are restricted to verbal communication and spatial and temporal constraints. Most of us cannot connect with higher vibrational, spiritual realms of existence. Human existence is heavy, dense, and slow compared with increased vibrations and expanded awareness and freedom of movement in the higher realms. Upon the death of our body, it and our earthly identity are no longer required and are left behind. And we also leave behind our physical pain and earthly anxieties. What humans refer to as death is the release or separation of the soul consciousness from the body, a shedding of our physical existence and a transition to a spiritually based existence. Our soul now enjoys heightened and more acute thought, perception, and awareness. The death of our body rebirths us into the spiritual realms. We depart our temporary home to return to our real home. It is a natural continuation of an eternal process of our spiritual evolution towards God or the source. And I'll share with you 4 or 5 observations of the experiencers on this point. Fear of death is human error. Our souls are eternal. Our earthly life is like a caterpillar. In human form, we are limited and move slowly with our cumbersome bodies. On death, we shed the chrysalis and take on a more beautiful form like a butterfly. The death of our body is an awakening of our spirit to truths no language can begin to describe. It is an elevation to a higher state of consciousness. Having shed my physical body, I felt truly alive as opposed to just existing. Our bodies die at the right moment. It may not seem so, in the earthly realm, but it is so in the spiritual realms. I've referred to spiritual rebirth, and what does that mean? And what is the concept of a life review? Many experiencers document undergoing a so-called life review in which the soul is shown a replay of their earthly life and invited to reflect on what they learned from their life experiences and interactions, whether they practiced unconditional love, and how they might have acted better towards others. The soul is shown those occasions when it manifested love to others, and those occasions when it hurt others to such a degree that they doubted their self-worth or diminished their own capacity to manifest love. The soul is invited to acknowledge its mistakes and to learn therefrom. The soul's conduct is not so much wrong, but not helpful in terms of its spiritual development towards God. The life review is not judgmental in nature. It is rather educational. There is no punishment, but rather is intended to be a journey of self-realization or awakening. Only the soul itself is invited to judge, evaluate, and reflect, as it is its harshest critic. That God would judge or punish is a human construct, as God only loves. The light did not praise or condemn my earthly actions or inactions, but paused some scenes and asked for my observations and reflection. The soul is asked questions like, to what extent did you love and assist others? What did you do that was totally selfless, in the sense of not being motivated by the prospect of personal gain? What knowledge did you acquire? The soul witnesses its life from the perspective of those who are affected by the soul's positive and negative conduct, experiencing their thoughts, feelings, and emotions. The soul feels respectively as its own the happiness, joy, pain, anger, hurt, and sadness of those whom the soul was kind and insensitive to. The soul witnesses how they either spread the manifestation of love to others or hurt someone with the pain the soul had given to them. It is the ultimate exercise in empathy, being in the shoes of others and feeling the intended and sometimes unintended effects of the soul's earthly acts and omissions. Even the soul's seemingly innocent choices can have implications beyond which we could ever have imagined. It therefore matters deeply what choices we do make in the exercise of our gift of free will. During the life review, souls are taught that we should never underestimate how impactful our thoughts, words, and deeds are on others and their unforeseen and extended consequences. Like dropping a pebble into the middle of a pond, what we do and do not do may have lasting effects on countless others as they ripple outwards. You see people who received love from you without you knowing it. You see all the good deeds done by others because of the love you had shown to them. What my life review taught me was that the most significant moments of our lives are not what we consider them to be. What we consider to be trivial actions or small kindnesses, like feeding a stray cat or helping a stranger, are the most significant. Small kindnesses result in unforeseen and profound manifestations of love. Random acts of kindness mean so much to God. In conclusion, why should we consider credible the messages the experiencers have brought back with them from beyond the veil? Most EAN's authors report that their out-of-body experience had a deeply profound, tangible, and enduring life-changing effect upon them. Their lives were never the same after their NDE. They acquired new knowledge into how we are supposed to live our earthly lives and to interact with other beings. They no longer fear the death of their physical body, and whether religious or atheist, before their experience, have now a certain knowledge of the afterlife. They recall vividly their NDE many, many years after it happened, which is not the case with dreams. When we dream at night, we regard the dream as far less real than our conscious, waking earthly experience. But experiencers regard our earthly existence as a mere dream compared with the ultimate reality of the spiritual realm. For those who are terminally ill, who fear the death of their physical body, who are suffering from a difficult bereavement, who are lost and confused about meaning in their life, these messages that our soul consciousness is eternal and that a beautiful afterlife awaits us should surely resonate. We are all on an eternal evolutionary journey towards communion with the Source. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very profound, nurturing. Yeah. We've got a question on the chat. Have you found any evidence of a person having a near-death experience, such as providing information that could only have been known by someone being outside of their body?
No, I don't recall coming across any such incident in terms of the written accounts. I can't recall, I went through so many of them, but not that can be verified by objective reality. Some referred to their being convinced that they had lived previous lifetimes and that they had a flood of recall or consciousness of that lifetime. But I can't recall anything in the accounts where that was confirmed with any physical or corroborative evidence. No.
There is a case of a lady who had an out-of-body experience, who saw a tennis shoe right at the near the ceiling, and nobody saw it. Nobody and you had to float up to the top to actually see it. Yeah, and when she came out, she became conscious after the surgery. She told.
I can actually, Joyce. I didn't read this account, but I have seen it online.
It's clarification.
Okay.
Pam Reynolds. I was going to say there is a case of Pam Reynolds. That you can get the YouTube online, but she had a brain aneurysm and she was essentially on death's doorstep. And she was operated on, I believe, in Texas. And she claims to have had an out-of-body experience during the 8-hour surgery. And she describes how she was floating near the ceiling of the operating theater. And she observed every step of the 8-hour operation. And actually, after she survived the operation and had follow-up treatment with the surgeon, she told the surgeon everything that happened, the exact description of the instruments that he used, and the surgeon was astounded. And this has probably been one of the strongest documented cases of out-of-body experience being able to corroborate what actually happened when they were not in their physical body. But I'm sorry, I can't recall any coming from the written accounts I read.
Okay, sorry.
I was going to say there's also an intriguing case of a woman, I believe she's an American, I'm not sure, either American or English. She, during her lifetime, was not sighted, and she had disabled hearing. But when she was involved in a car accident, she had an out-of-body experience. And she said that in the spirit realms, her vision and hearing were completely restored. And when she returned to her body after the surgery was finished, she again became, she remained in a state of sightlessness and deafness. So there are some intriguing instances on YouTube and on the internet.
Okay, yep.
That example I just gave can be found on the website of Eternia, set up by Professor Eben Alexander, who wrote Proof of Heaven and who set up the Eternia organization. And he documents that a woman's case on his website. So Eternea. Professor Alexander was a neurosurgeon working at Harvard, who was a professed atheist, a Christian in name only, but he was really an agnostic or an atheist who had a near-death experience. He was in a deep coma for 7 days. And when he returned, he committed to writing everything he remembered experiencing, and he wrote Proof of Heaven, which I must say, if you have the chance to read it, it confirms many of the observations that I've alluded to during my talk today.
Oh, sorry, James, did you say the tennis shoe case has been discredited?
Yes, it's something with my investigations over the years I've really looked deeply into. And it turned out that some skeptics actually went to the hospital and they went to the room, excuse me, that the lady was in, and they discovered that it wasn't the usual thing. When you look deeper into these things, they found that the facts didn't really match the story, and that she could actually have seen that ledge from downstairs when they physically went through the steps and went where she was, etc. And they did it's on the internet, they did a very in-depth step-by-step look at, was it possible that she could have seen this? And it turned out that, yeah, it wasn't the case. based on what
Oh,
they
okay.
they did.
Okay. Interesting.
I have heard of this phenomenon. It's referred to in Professor Alexander's book as terminal lucidity. So when people are nearing the end of their earthly lives, they seem to be able to visualize the spirits of deceased loved ones. And it's almost like the deceased loved one is coming to collect them, to take them home again, to help them enter the tunnel of light, to follow the portal of light. And they are like spirit guides. And to give hope, assurance, and comfort to the soul that's about to depart their physical body and to enter the light. This is quite a common phenomenon, and I think it has a little bit to do with the shared death experience that was Madeline, I'm not sure if I got the name right, was talking about shortly before the conference began. But this is certainly a phenomenon that I've heard of. And in fact, some of the experiencers do say, and I didn't mention this, but there are beings of light who actually conduct our life review, but we all have spirit guides or guardian angels, if you can call them that help us to transition from our physical earthly life back to our spiritual life.
I hope my microphone is working adequately. More a comment than a question. Marco mentioned about the famous red tennis shoe case being discounted, and quite a few of the skeptics have more or less indicated that, and I had assumed that was the case. However, the book by Rudolph Smith, The Self Does Not Die, goes into that case with considerable detail. And from what I read, I would suggest it's anything but an open and shut case, that case is being disproved. I think the skeptics have stretched quite a few suggestions and observations. So I think that case is, I would suggest, probably still open. And if anything, the weight of evidence from what I've read would suggest that it is valid. But that's just an observation. I thought I'd just comment on that. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, there's lots of assumptions. The Pam Reynolds case as well has been subjected to a lot of criticism. I mean, they create scenarios like, that you could see the shoe from multiple viewpoints. Well, not unless you go there and actually check it out. You don't know what's supposition and what's actually being checked out. So you have to read criticisms from both sides, to make sure, to get declarations of what they actually did.
James, you've got maybe just a quick, interesting point you want to make?
Thank you. I'll try and make it quick. Again, through my investigations, there was an organisation that did a study of over 500 people having operations and testing for NDEs. Of those that had NDEs, they could find no evidence of them seeing anything outside that physically. But there is one case that remains unsolved, and it's documented by President Carter, that when he was in office, there was a plane that had crashed in South America. The CIA supposedly used a remote viewer who went out of their body to find the crashed plane. And that's documented in Carter's biography that happened. Now, whether it was the CIA, and they actually did find the aircraft in South America. Now, whether that was the CIA using they said they'd used a psychic to do this, whether they were using it as a cover for a satellite or something, I don't know. But it is one of the only documented pieces of evidence of an out-of-body experience that I could find.
Is that Jimmy Carter's autobiography?
Yeah, it's in there.
Am I mixing up? Because I thought Bill Clinton wrote a
Maybe I've got the presidents mixed up.
Yeah, unless his he reported something about a remote viewing as well.
That was the
I
one.
don't-
I've got the names mixed up.
I know Jimmy Carter was going to look into UFOs. But he said he promised he would if he was made president, and when he was made president, he didn't. So, presidents don't have above top secret access to to a lot of military stuff. So you only could get so far. But I don't know. You'd have to check it. You have to check it to see if it was Carter or Clinton. I can't remember either.
Yeah, I would say you're right, Lance.
Okay, we've got just a quick couple of comments. Sandra, did you want to ask the question? You said, if one experienced these things without a near-death experience, how can that be? I don't know what you mean. Remote viewing, you talk reference. And anyway, Georges, according to the Lotus Sutra or Buddhism, prayers are done at the main temple in Japan for the deceased to help them about their bad karma. Opinion, please, Douglas.
I think remote viewing and near-death experiences are something quite different, but you might ask Sandra Hilliard on that point. But to get back to a point that James was making, I think some research has been done to the effect that those people who have died suddenly and do not have any medication or drugs in them are much more prone to have a near-death experience than those who are heavily sedated. In terms of getting rid of negative energy or bad karma, when you leave your physical body, if I can remember one of the accounts correctly, your energy is cleansed. And that is part of the life review process, in which you are helped to reflect on your life by your spirit guide. That is a cleansing away of your negative energy and your consciousness being elevated to a higher level and imbued with more positive energy. Buddhism would call it a purge, like a puja or a cleansing, but that's my understanding of it. When our souls leave our body and are undergoing this life review, at that point, the negative energy is picked up, analyzed, and through self-reflection is dissipated, and we are debriefed, and we are sent back into our next incarnation to further learn and move closer towards the light.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I've got some comments about your talk. I found your talk mesmerizing, like a meditation, encapsulating all the most important aspects of spiritual consciousness. I'd like to listen to this on loop every day. That's from Russ. I really enjoyed your talk, Douglas. Agreed, Russ. Very peaceful delivery. I'm just aware of the time. Sandra is saying, if you experience the same thing as an NDE, but you have never been near death, how can that be? I assume you're asking people that experience similar things as in an NDE, but was not having an NDE.
Yeah, there are several gradations of experiences out of body. Your heart can stop completely, and your vital signs can be nil, or you can also have what is called a Kundalini experience, lying on your bed at night and focusing on one particular area in front of your chakra. And you suddenly see a small prick of light and you follow it as intensely as you can. And your soul actually leaves your body and shoots towards this pinprick of light, which eventually expands. So there are different ways of having an out-of-body experience, but the person who has it on their bed having a Kundalini experience is nowhere near death. Their heart is still beating. But many of the accounts that I sourced at Ian's, they'd actually died. under medical supervision.
Mhm. Another question from Martine. Do the experiencer decide to come back? Did they have a choice?
Well, that's a very good question. Invariably, all of them, virtually all of them, don't want to come back because the afterlife is beautiful. Why should I come back to the earthly realm where there's pain and suffering and unhappiness? But often they don't have a choice. The spirit guide says, you have more to complete. Your mission is not completed. You have more to learn, so you must return. Some of them are told you must return and relate your experience to humanity so that you can give spiritual charity or assistance to humanity. But there are cases, for example, air disasters or horrific car accidents, when the physical body is so utterly mangled that it's just not possible for the soul to return to their former body. So the guide says, you cannot return. You must go through the gateway or the portal. You have no choice. But essentially, the soul has very little choice. They are directed, you either go back or you have to enter the gateway. Your earthly life is now finished.
And Douglas, have there been any differences in the experiences of people who suicided?
Yes.
Attempted suicide?
Again, that's in my book. Mainstream religion frown upon suicide. It's regarded in the spirit world as an act of self-destruction. It is contrary to God's will for the soul. We come here for a purpose, to learn and experience and to grow, but it's not a sin in the spiritual world. It is something that is not so much wrong, but not helpful to the soul's evolution towards God. So the suicidal soul will be forgiven, allowed to move on, but it must return and undergo many incarnations to move on from the negative energy involved in the act of self-destruction.
Well, thank you, Douglas. So your book, Transcendental Spirituality, Wisdom and Virtue, that's released next year in May?
That comes out next May, but my recent book on near-death experiences doesn't have a publication date yet.
Okay.
Likely the end of next year.
End of next year. Okay. Okay, one last question. Doing prayers to the dead, can this help the deceased?
Doing prayers to the dead. Yes. Yes, there's not much in the accounts on prayer, but when you pray, you are connecting. You are connecting with the soul. Positive vibrations and thoughts and energies, you will connect with the soul wherever they may be and help to heal them. The soul, this is one thing that was pointed out in Eben Alexander's book, Proof of Heaven. The soul can access any historical period or location on earth. So if a soul wants to be near to a loved one, it can do that. And when you pray for a deceased relative, I believe that the soul and the person undergoing the prayer will connect, their energy will connect. But that's a very rough answer. But I do believe that prayer as a form of energy or telepathic transference would be effective.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Douglas. That was what a very nurturing, therapeutic,
My pleasure.
soothing session, talk. Yeah.